public services were still, let's say, out there working during the peak of the crisis. Now, the idea is to try and guide European policies and national policies to be more aware about the added value of these essential services. And the way we do this, or we try to do this, is firstly to acknowledge various phases, the three main phases that have been recognized by the EU. So we have emergency. I'm sorry, I haven't really, I don't have the term in English. So the emergency exit. So this is during the peak of the crisis, during which time we try to make sure that public funds and public aids were available to all public services and public service companies. And we also fought a lot on ensuring that the SMEs involved in continuing public services should not only be from the private sector, but also from the public sector, sorry. And some companies were not given access to these aids because of their status. And we believe this is a discrimination in a way. And so we believe it is important to change, the definition of an SME. And so our council has been working on how we can change the rules in order to allow people to come back to work, come back to their offices, let's say, bearing in mind the need to ensure health and safety measures. And so let's say, all in all, we try to focus on the long-term vision. Long-term vision has always been at the center of our discussions and of our approach, if I may. And so the idea is to discussing with the various services that maintain their level of service during the peak period of this crisis, and in different ways, have proven to be major players in terms of resilience. And so, as I said, we believe it is extremely important to focus on the long run and working with private sector and public sector, with the different sizes of companies. It is, we believe, very important for Europe to be able to tackle the issues, ensuring for these companies to carry out their business, perhaps not as usual, but in the best manner possible. We know that there are various approaches, politically correct approaches, if I may say, for a green recovery, but, well, we believe that the COVID excuse doesn't hold, and we've seen approaches which we believe are just not acceptable given the situation. Now, so the idea is to try and use this long-term approach in various ways. So we have various approaches I would like to mention perhaps later on, innovation namely. And just because of the COVID emergency, some people have, or some instances and institutions have decided to perhaps put aside these strategies, innovation strategies. But we believe that we need this growth strategy covering all areas, and once again, on the long run. This long run approach we already had beforehand, and the Council, together with the European Parliament, was working on this approach for the next EU generations, and coming up with very interesting proposals, studying these very interesting proposals and trying not to cut these down to only French proposals. So this is the European approach. Now, on the national approach, or the national level, we are seeing here and there how we can help the players, give them more visibility in order to implement their SGI-friendly so-called recovery plans, which obviously fit in this long-term vision. And Michele is part of the Italian organization, which is especially now very present in trying to put out there this message about the long-term vision within the recovery plans, and discussing with the Italian government, namely. And we believe that this should be the benchmark roadmap for many organizations. And I'm quite proud for this, because I mean, I am myself from Italian extract, and I'm very proud to see Italians on the on the let's say in the driver's seat in this matter. Now, we've also seen this reflection about two main issues which should lead to a better understanding and a cooperation at the European level, including SEGs. And so we are right now working on what the future of these SEGs would be, and given the crisis, how can we impose this new paradigm I'm referring to. And so we will be presenting our works during the launch ceremony of the new CEEP name. We are going to be changing our name in the near future. And I believe that the new name will give you an idea on how our vision of the future includes these SDGs. And I would like to officially this morning invite you to come to the ceremony. I hope that some of you at least will be able to be present in Brussels for the occasion, and for the others at least online. So this ceremony will namely welcome the Vice President of the European Council, who will give his approach, his vision on our work. And we hope this will be one way to raise awareness at the level of the EU about the importance of our work. So, well, this was kind of setting the frame of our discussions. And if I may, I would now like to move to questions to the speakers. And I'll start with Anna Cavazzini. So, Anna.
English, and I mean, you come from the group that has been defending the green future since decades, much before this becomes a kind of buzzword in Brussels as well as the national level. So the question to you is, what should be the role of SGI enterprises in the implementation of the European Green Deal?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you so much for the introduction and also for the invitation. I hope I understood most of what you said, but my French is not perfect. I hope I don't repeat of what you said already. But I think it's amazing that we're having this roundtable today, and I'm also really looking forward to the discussion. As it was announced, I have to leave a little bit earlier because of a trialogue, but I stay as long as possible in order to also listen, of course, to the other speakers and to the discussion. You said rightly so that the Greens are fighting forever already for better climate protection and the environment. And I think really the last European elections and the Big Fridays for Future movement showed that now climate change arrived at the heart of EU policymaking with the Green Deal. And this is really amazing. I don't know if you followed the votes yesterday in the European Parliament. We voted like the most ambitious climate law ever, and even voted on a higher CO2 reduction number than the Commission had proposed. And all of this, of course, creates a lot of dynamics, and I think positive dynamics, also for the economy, and also, of course, for public services enterprises, because this dynamic, I think, can be used in a very, very good way. You mentioned also the recovery package. We Greens have said from the beginning, and I have the feeling that also President von der Leyen is taking this up, that all the money that is used now for the recovery should be used also for transformation at the same time and for implementing the Green Deal. Sorry, I have construction works in the parliament going on in my office or next to my office. I hope it's not too bad. I can't change it. I'm sorry for that. So basically now we have a really big chance. We have very good legislation or like voting patterns in the European Parliament. We have the Green Deal as the main framework. And now we also have a lot of money. I mean, it still needs to be officially approved, of course, by all member states in the Parliament from the Corona recovery that can be used for transformation. So I think we are in a very interesting spot. And if we put like the framework in the right way, it's going to be really, really good. There's also, of course, the chance that we miss this opportunity if we don't use the money for transformation. And that's why we're also fighting so hard for getting a huge climate percentage in the recovery fund, and also trying to phase out fossil fuel subsidies and so on and so on. But back to your main question, I think public services enterprises have really a very, very big role to play when it comes to implementing the Green Deal. First of all, I think the Green Deal is not only about the environment, it's also about leaving no one behind and about social. And I can only say, I mean, I preach to the converted that public service enterprises play a main role in providing justice on the ground. For example, we saw in so many parts of Germany as well, where I come from, when public services are being cut, people get frustrated and they vote for the right wing, or they feel abandoned. So I think having strong public services available is really important for also the acceptance of the transformation we are in. So this is one important role I see for public services. The second big role is, of course, the economic activity, because in the Parliament, we're having a very, very strong focus at the moment in my committee, in the Internal Market Committee, on the circular economy. And when I think of all the, for example, waste companies, of housing, of energy, of water, I mean, there's so much what public service utilities also can do in order to, with their economic activity, contribute to the transformation. This is very, very important, I think. What you said in your introduction, if I understood well the French, is we are also, of course, fighting here in the Parliament for that the SME definition should, of course, also like include public ownership companies. This is very crucial in order to have strong public service utilities. And what is important for me also, because I'm member also in the Trade Committee, I think we have to be very careful that certain either EU legislation or also international trade agreements don't undermine public services, because we have sometimes clauses in international trade agreements that make it harder once something is privatized to recommunalize again. And we see it in, for example, a lot of German cities that after privatizing the energy system or whatever, the citizens decided they don't want to have it. Or after they have privatized water, the cities want to buy it back because they want to have it in public hands. And sometimes EU legislation or worse, trade agreements make it very, very hard to do this, to keep the public space. So I think for me, it is very important that when we talk about how we do EU legislation, how we do international trade rules, that we always keep in mind that public services have a separate role to play and are not only normal companies. So these are the main points politically I wanted to raise. I'm looking forward to the discussion with you.
Thank you very much, Anna. As you said, you are preaching to the converted and vice versa, I would say. So that's why we need more and more MEPs like you, because as soon as we go out of this group, it's not so easy. So we have to join forces, and I'm really happy that you're part of our discussion. Now, turning to Pascal, and I do it in English. the question I have for you is from this perspective of an elected representative in charge of the city and the well-being of its inhabitants, how would you say that SGI are contributing to this transition? And as Anna said, it's not only environmental, it's also social and economic, that we are due to implement to face the many challenges arising and that have been accelerated during the COVID crisis.
Oui, je vais me
Right. Well, if I may, I'll answer to your question in English, in French. So, managing public services by a private company, right, dealing with a public service, is historically, let's say, a flexible model, right? And most of the companies who fit within a market and a market economy are the same, let's say. Companies who are in charge of a public service have this long-term vision ability. But also, you talked about resilience, right? We believe that they have this ability for better engineering, which will allow them, as they have the mandate of a public service mission, they will be able to deploy skills to the benefits of the local community, allowing them to see beyond the daily management of their activities. And I believe that this is a feature which is common to all public service companies. Other than that, or otherwise, sorry, companies have to deal with the economic context, the market needs, requests, the client requirements also, so quite short-sighted approach, if I may, right? But public services or public service companies can provide the territory and the people they work for long-term solutions. And we've seen that the COVID crisis has played a role in this. For example, public transport have been identified, and wrongly so, but I mean understandable nonetheless, as a place for possible COVID contamination. So we needed to be quite imaginative, in our approaches on how to leave the lockdown situation, allowing people to use public transport without a major risk, right? And in order to do so, we fitted gel distributors in public transports, and we also invented new methods to clean our vehicles. And this research, right, this approach is being continued and will be indispensable, we believe, in order to manage not only transport, but also to manage, let's say, the users as a whole, and manage their fear or possible fear, right? And so this possibility or this ability for public service companies to do benchmark, to see the innovations out there in Europe, because every city, every network has come up with their own approach, right? And so this ability to be able to look at the national and European picture is a feature which puts the public service companies in the best place to serve the people they're involved with, and the people they work for, right, in the local communities. But this is only possible if shareholders, if all the stakeholders require this from us, right? Public service companies are only let's say implement the will and the decisions of the political public authorities, right? So we can only make our fellow citizens benefit from what we can do if the politics follow or push us, let's say. And you mentioned recovery, right? Recovery without these public service companies is not possible. And we've seen during the peak period of the COVID crisis that these public service companies were the ones out there continuing life as much as possible, life as normal and business as usual, right? And so this is only thanks to their ability to innovate.
Merci Pascal. En fait,
Thank you, Pascal. Actually, you described our raison d'être. We're trying to help our members to exchange good practices and to be innovative. Is it normal that I can hear the interpreters? So we're here for networking purposes, but we're also getting together to get the political support without which we cannot function.
This, I repeat this because I come back from a meeting yesterday where I was with the other social partners and in front of Vice President Maroš Sefcovic. I was flabbergasted how again and again the music from the private industry speaking out of green priorities can still have a say. So I'm really happy that in parallel, the Parliament made such a strong vote in favor of the climate law. But just to tell you that for us, is the daily fight is not over. So we have to do this despite the good vote in the Parliament. Now I switch to Michele. And the question to you is very linked to your daily job because I'm going to ask you what are the challenges that the water sector face in your region, climate change, urbanization versus desertification, and how do you adapt those challenges? And I know, the group is very innovative, so I'm sure you will have even more than the two examples I'm asking you about innovative projects by your group. And also, what is very interesting for this debate, how does the public status, public ownership of CAP holding make it easier or, on the contrary, more difficult for you to innovate?
Thanks, Valeria. Thanks for the invitation. I'm talking from Milan. As you know, we were the center of the COVID pandemic, so we are able to change very faster than before, obviously. And the water sector, especially in a very urbanization, in an area like Milano, is a really with a very huge urbanization, is really changed in the last decade. First of all, we decide to open the concept of the water sector. When I started this job, I remember the water sector had very narrow borders. We have to only to manage the water pipe from the counter to the wastewater plant. The storm water is out of the service because it was a problem of the municipalities. Obviously, the municipalities were not be able to face this problem because the climate change needs a lot of money and the connection with the water service is really strict. And so 6 years ago, we decided to open the concept of water, including the pipe water, but also the storm water. So now we are able to manage, to adapt, to face the climate change, invest a lot of money from the tariff to transform the city, the municipality in a green city and a green municipality. Because if they are able to adapt the urbanization to the climate change, obviously the water assets are able to going well. So for this reason, over 34% of our investment plan is to adapt and to face the climate change. So I think that this is the resilient city is one for us, is one of the gain, of the best gain that we have. The second one was and is the circular economy approach. I remember when I started to talk about this, that the circular economy is composed by two words, circular but economy. So we have to, I was able to demonstrate to the mayors that the circular economy, invest in green economy, is a way to save money. For example, in Milan, we have in tariff, in a water tariff, a building that clean the biogas to transform the biogas in biomethane. The biomethane is a fuel for our fleet, and so now we have a green fleet. All the cars that we use are green, with obviously a very important effect also in the environment, but also in our wallet, because we save a lot of money in oil. I remember that when I started, all company had a green car, maybe the president car. This is a way to the greenwashing of the company. Now, circular economy and the Green Deal demonstrated the green economy could be a very way to save money, to reduce the tariff, the water tariff. The other one, and so also, as you see, booster in circular economy means also invest in innovation. And I think that the public company, as the first speaker said, have not to be the provider, simply service provider, but it should be a partner of the municipality and a nest of innovation, because we are able to foster innovation in the water and in the other sector. And for this reason, the third gain is a building network. As you see, I was the general manager of this company. Now I am the strategic manager. I am the general manager of another company, water company in the north of Milan. Why? Because the connection of the territories are really, really strict. If you manage the water not good in the north, in the south, we have a lot of problems. And so we are able to understand this concept and operating in a basin view. As you know, in Italy, the water basin is the same of administrative borders. And so it's not true, because the water operates in a basin way. And so now, creating network, building network, connecting different kind of water companies, connecting the water companies with the waste companies, the energy companies, with the agriculture companies, is a way to create connection and to build, to operate also a advocacy policy of the public companies. The second, maybe the third question was: is the public being public is created different? Unfortunately not, because we have the same problem of the private company, red tape first of all, and the same behaviors of when we promote some genial idea or some project. We have the same behavior from the municipalities as we are a Coca-Cola or Pepsi-Cola. They forgot that we are their company. But the other side, despite the European law, the ownership in Italy generated different rules. And it's very, very difficult for us to operate in this kind of market, because we have the same gains and the same goals of the private company. ARERA, our national authority, put the same quality target, but we have different rules, because we are a public company, so we have to respect strictly rules that, despite the European directive, the Italian law put against us. So we try to manage the water despite all this kind of rules. The last question is about the project. We are trying to foster the reuse water. Milan and the city are fostering the water reuse in agriculture. And by the other way, we are sharing our asset with the other service, creating a biorefinery. So we are able to connect water, biomethane, sludge, valorization, and waste manage in all one plan. So the sharing economy for us is a way to connect the water to the other sector and create good efforts for the environment, and I remember also for the wallet of the city.
Perfect. I was telling you we are reaching the time, and as I know Michele since many, many years, and being Italian by origin, I would like to add that really Michele did a magic job with seeing the kind of really different political colors he had to deal with, because when speaking about Milan, you have a very big territory where you have a very illuminated mayor of Milano, but very different parties governing the periphery. And so Michele was able to convince everybody.
Valeria, now I'm operating in an alt-right party.
I know.
In the north of Italy is the same. Is the same.
But that's why, I mean, you have a very strong argument, and this is our argument of the public services, saying is worth the money. There is a business case in investing, and whatever political color will have to understand this. So it's a success example. Now, last but not least, we turn to Andreas, and also you have, I mean, you represent a big organization that does a lot for all the territories that you represent in Sweden. So my question is, how do you see that public enterprises have an important role in innovation, developing new solutions to facilitate access to funds and ensure reaching society's objectives for sustainability?
Thank you very much. First, I want to say it was very interesting to hear the examples from Michele. And I agree how public service enterprises can find synergies, as you said, from energy, water, waste at the same time. And public service companies have certainly been pioneers in many areas in sustainability. For instance, public transport in Sweden, local regional, now runs on 90% renewable energy. So that's biogas, biodiesel, renewable electricity, etc. What I wanted to lift also was the importance of public service enterprises that go sort of on the other way, on the horizontal way. And as Valeria said, to mention two examples, one on financing and one on public procurement, which are, as you know, important functions to make the whole sector more green and sustainable. And so first, I would like to lift the possibility of publicly owned banks or financial institutions, green bond institutions. And such exist in many European countries and are on the way. It's just starting in the UK. I know you have in France since a few years, you have the, what's called the AFL, the Association France Locale. And we have since a couple of decades in Sweden, for instance, Kommun Invest, which lowers the costs of borrowing money for municipalities, issuing joint bonds. And it has 55% of the total lending market for municipalities and regions. Almost all are members, except all the biggest one that can go to the market themselves. And recently, one of the innovations that I wanted to talk is how Kommun Invest, where I'm a part of the Green Committee, have issued now 10 green bonds, total 7 billion euros. So we're the largest emitter in the Nordic countries of green bonds. And this makes it accessible also for small projects in municipalities. So it's more than 400 projects behind this, from hospitals on the giant side to many small projects in transport, in production of renewable energy, etc. And there is a rapid development of this sector now, and it's very interesting to see also how the European framework on green bonds and the taxonomy will be reaching the market, and we're just hoping that it will not complicate things too much. Sometimes it's a very important and positive regulation, but sometimes also regulation can overburden the people that want to do the right thing, whereas you don't have so many demands on the fossil, the one working with the fossil economy. But already now the green bond, the green loans ratio of this Kommun Invest is 11%. So 11% of the total lending, which is more than half of the total lending of municipalities, regions, is green now, corresponding to green projects. And it does get a little premium in the market as well, as there is a big interest in the finance sector to become more green. And the second example that I wanted to raise is a procurement agency. And there's one owned by my association, by the Association of Local Authorities and Regions, and which does framework agreements in many areas for all local authorities and regions. And it's all ranging from services to entire residential buildings and preschool buildings. And in most of these areas, we insert a lot of criteria for sustainability, to have energy efficient buildings, and now increasingly placing demands also on the climate effect of the building materials, asking you have to calculate the climate footprint of the building, and you have to make improvements during the agreement period. And of course, at the same time, these come out to be less expensive than for local authorities to buy preschools themselves to go out to the market. And this is also a very positive development. It requires a lot of innovation. It requires good institutions, that we build solid institutions, and it requires a lot of cooperation. And as you know, in public procurement, the most important thing is to have a good market dialogue. What is market and private companies able to deliver? And we have to cooperate with all the other procurers, with other countries, and national procurers and private procurers also. So that's another example of innovation and the importance of building institutions that enable continuous innovation towards sustainability. And both of these institutions proved, of course, very important in the Corona crisis also. First, the state said that, oops, there's a lack of personal protection equipment in healthcare. We have to do something about this. We had no stocks. We were not as smart as Finland that had had their stocks filled up. So we had to go out to the market, and the state said, okay, we will go and do this. But they found they had no capacity. So in the end, it was our procurement agency that did the procurement on the national market, and still are doing. And now there's not a lack of any protective equipment, except the gloves are still short in the international market, as you know, the vitriol gloves. So this is also building solid institutions that are quick to respond to crisis and work long-term towards sustainability. So that was my contribution to say the importance of building these institutions, and also how they are spreading from country to country.
Thank you, Andreas. This was super interesting, both aspects, and I would like just to comment on the taxonomy part, because it's very important that such a convinced pro-green association like yours, member of a pro-green association like we are, is still putting this caveat, is, you know, be aware that taxonomy, if not well managed, can create undue burden to enterprises. So we want to do it right, but to do it right, we want to be in the lead of the implementation of taxonomy on the ground. Otherwise, you have the counterproductive effect. So this was a super important point. As you were all very disciplined in respecting the allocated time, we have half an hour for debate. And I know Anna has to leave in 5 minutes. So if there is a question, I mean, for me, it's not super easy to follow the chat, but questions, I mean, as you know, there are a lot of virtual participants, and those can write their question in the chat. So if there is something specific for Anna, I would like to take this as a first question, so that she has the answer, she has the chance to answer. And okay, so there is someone from Nantes helping me in filtering this question, and apparently, I can't tell you who in the chat, but the question was how an MEP can directly support SGI enterprises. So what can you commit to do for us more than what you are doing in your current function?
Thanks for the question. This is what I partially tried to answer already in my little input. I mean, of course, we as MEPs, we are the co-legislator in the European Union. So that's why, of course, we have to be aware that in all the decisions we take here, we are fighting for strong public services, and as I, for example, mentioned, for trade agreements that exclude public services, and pressure on privatization and lock-in and whatsoever. So I think my biggest role I see in trying to get majorities in the European Parliament for strong legislation. And I think what is really important is to look at the majorities we're having, because often, for example, we're just discussing a report on services and service liberalization in the Internal Market Committee, and there is a strong divide. So it's not given, it's not taken for granted. There is a lot of also political forces that want to liberalize and deregulate for any cost. So that's why also stakeholders like you or civil society is so important to also create this dynamic that we can have good results at the end here in the parliament, because on those questions we are, I have to admit, a little bit divided in my committee. And the second thing I see my role as MEP in is, of course, also creating predictable frameworks, policy frameworks for the transformation. Valeria, it's a little bit what you mentioned, for example, on the taxonomy. I think we have to create as legislators. It's not a secret, I'm a green, I want to push for the transformation, but I also know that companies need a clear framework and they need predictability. And I think this is also something I commit to as an MEP. And if it's okay, I have to run now because I have to go to the next trilogue. But it was very, very nice to listen to all of your inputs from the colleagues, and I hope you have a great conference.
Thank you for being there, and we keep in touch. It's not the end of the story.
Bye.
Bye. So I'm looking if there are other questions from the chat, because otherwise I have a second round for all of you, but the best would be that we give, the possibility for those who are not there to speak to make questions. But if not, if I'm not receiving any signal from my friends in Nantes, I have some question, but let's see. Wait, give me a couple of minutes. Okay, apparently there are not, at least not pertinent question in the chat. Then I go ahead on my side. I have another question for you, Pascal. So you did already give us the example of transfer, but do you have other example from Nantes Métropole or in general also from the FEDEPEL, so the Organization of Local Public Service Enterprises you are a member of innovating towards more sustainable processes, contributing to more livable cities. So in a way, there is a lot of experience in Nantes, but I suppose you are one of the best in class in France. So I don't know if you have also other examples. And then I will come back to the chat because apparently people are waking up.
Well, yes, indeed, I am lucky enough to be chair of the mixed market committee, which manages part of our economic activities here in Nantes. Now, I mean, we're not in charge of the let's say the exchange, the trade of fruit, vegetables, and other goods, but we do provide these goods to the various restaurants in Nantes and other company restaurants, namely, and various schools also. So we do play a very important role in when it comes to the distribution of fresh goods within our area, and so we try to insist on obviously organic foods, and we insist also on the circular economy dimension of this activity. And with the new national interest market, MIN, as we call it in France, we try to limit the access to the city center of gas oil fueled trucks, right? When it comes to the distribution of these goods. So we try to encourage the use of green vehicles, so electric vehicles for this. And then we also invested a huge photovoltaic farm in the city center of the city. Then we also have our e-bus way, which is a fully electrified network with a system that allows it to recharge at various stops. And so we have a very interesting transport capacity, and which adds to our public transport network already. And I perhaps could give you another example. This is more about collaboration. We know that transport means within the city should not conflict with each other, but try to be as complementary as possible. And so Semitan, which I chair, coordinates the various mobility services within the city, within the urban area, and we try to manage carpooling, car sharing, long or short term bike rentals, and also public transport, in order to organize the multimodal approach to mobility in the best way possible, and especially in this post-COVID period, and also during the COVID period, it was extremely important. It is extremely important to adapt our mobility services to new practices. And this is exactly what we are doing right now. We are carrying out various studies at the national level, but also at the European level, in order to assess these new mobility practices, the new intermodality practices. And when I talked about the importance of these public service companies, well, this is a good example. Thanks to our flexibility, thanks to us being reactive, we were able to trigger these studies very fast.
I love this cat, Andreas. Before I go ahead, I have a question to you and Michele. If I speak French, are you correctly translated? Do you hear me in English? Michele? Yeah? Okay. Alors, c'est pas...
Right, so because I see a question here on the chat which is in French, so I'd rather read it in French. But we can hear the interpreters. This is not agreeable. Could we please switch the interpretation? Good, thank you. So Frank Ball from Horizon Public newspaper asks, what do public service companies, enterprises, bring to local communities in terms of research and long-term vision? We haven't really talked about or mentioned research, so this is perhaps something that we could look into. Do you have in-house capacity, in-house abilities with regards to this topic, or do you work perhaps with other institutions on this topic? I don't know who wants to answer this first, Andreas or Michele.
The important contributions, for instance, as I mentioned, the Procurement Agency that we own, that does framework agreements for all municipalities and regions. They, of course, they have to follow up and validate the deals that they buy. That's the most important thing in procurement, that you actually get the quality and the social conditions that you ask for. And so, of course, they have to do a lot of work on that. And that includes setting up a system for testing the chemicals, the chemical contents of the products that you're buying. And it also has set up a system for making inspections, going to Thailand, checking chicken farms, etc. And this is, I mean, this kind of research, which has to be done to control things, that can be done through a joint effort by these kind of agencies. And that's one concrete example.
Michele, as I have immediately after a question on Sweden, I will keep on Andreas, because we have a very concrete question to you on the mask and the COVID emergency you mentioned. Est-ce que la Suède a pu trouver ces masques?
Has Sweden found masks made or manufactured in Sweden or in Europe? So this is a question.
Well, basically, they are procuring on the international market. So it's not just on the Swedish market. But a lot of things happen, as you know, production in Europe, but that's another arena. But we're going out on the international market, and we needed to pool all municipalities and regions, the procurement, to get a good purchasing power on the international market.
Very good. So it's a very precise answer, and it's part of, what COVID brought into light, the dependency of Europe to foreign markets in too many regards. So Michele, now the question to you on research, and then I have another question for you.
Yes, thank you. First of all, the public companies are not a research center, but we are a way to promote the research. Many in the water sector, many of the research don't go after the laboratory phase, and so we decided to open our plants to a on-site research. With this project, we achieved also 4 million of grants from Europe. We create a network of plants where research center, private company, university are able to test their research. And for me, the huge rule of the public company is to foster the research. Don't substitute to the research center, but operate with them. Because every day we meet startup or genial idea about sludge, energy saving, fertilization, water use, etc. But all this kind of research need a time to test, and a time to test not in a laboratory site, but in a real site. And we have a lot of space, a lot of a former building, a former process where they are able to test, and we achieve the positive of negative result on real. And this for example, this is a project that is operating now. This is the third year, is operating now in Milan, and we have 8 wastewater plant with ever research about oxygen, hydrogen, sludge consumption, energy saving, use kind of mushroom, not to eat, but kind of mushroom to transform the sludge in a raw material for the pipe. If this kind of research will go well, we are able to transform the sludge in a pipe that we use for the sewage. And so we are able to transform what was waste in a future product. And for this reason, I think that the network with the research center is a way to transform, as I told, transform a normal provider service in a pattern, in a hub of innovation.
That's a great example, and I would say for the Italian case, the next mission, next priority is to transfer this kind of excellence also to the south of Italy, because we know that, I mean, one of the main issues we have is this discrepancy between north and south. And one of the kind of aim of the recovery plan for Italy should be to have a long-term structural change, also boosting the capacity of the south. I'm just quoting Utilitalia's document, but I think is an important moment for Italy in this respect. The other question I had for you, Michele, is whether the European legislative framework is impacting your activities, and if yes, of course is yes, because directives have to be implemented at the national level, but is it something, is it a obstacle, or is it a booster for your targets?
Absolutely a booster now. We changed the way to consider the European legislation. I thought about maybe 15 years ago. For years, we consider the Europe as a wallet, forgetting that we put the money in the wallet, the Italian money in the wallet, but we consider as the money arrived directly from Europe, as Europe was another country inspect of Italy. But the behavior was really changed, because the European Commission obliged us to put target higher and higher. We are pummeled from Europe about wastewater. And for this reason, CAP, my company, one of the reasons that the municipalities decide to merge over 14 companies in 1 year was because all around Milan, there are a lot of European fines, and the municipality understood that they could pay with the citizen tax this kind of fines. So we decided to create finally a good and big company able to resolve all the wastewater plants. And so the region, the European Commission was a really a stick in the back of the mayors to finally to have a big company to solve the problem. And now with the Drinking Water Directive and the Green Deal and the hydrogen plants, absolutely is a booster. Is a booster because we are not alone. We have to think in a network way, consider that our economy is not an autarkic economy, but is a connection economy. And so when the European Commission put the finger of hydrogen is not a good, is a research field now. It's not able to operate with the company, but we are investing. And so we are creating a very little plants to transform hydrogen directly for biomethane or directly for the wastewater. And in this way, we are going to step very quietly, but in the same direction. And maybe the main rule of the European Commission, Europe is to put the gain. The goal is this: decarbonization with hydrogen. And so all the companies, all the countries has to collect their strengths to go there.
Very clear, and it's really important to have such a positive vision of how the European Commission, European policies have been boosting something that was necessary. And this is so important because, as I said previously, very too often from the private industry, we have this, no approach, hands off. We are able, not all of us, not all of our members. So I would like to bring even more and more this proactive approach to say, is something that is going into that direction. So even if we are not ready now, let's try to do our best to get ready, because that's what Europe's need. I see Andreas want to intervene again, and then I will go back to Pascal.
I think what you're saying very wisely is the need for public services to provide the infrastructure that creates development and competition. Because sometimes, otherwise we can have a big problem. And one example of this and the importance to be active on the European arena is in Stockholm. We have the largest city network of broadband, of black fiber, of digital infrastructure. And this was, the European Commission was not quite happy with this model because they thought that we must have competition, so things must be private. But it's actually it's the opposite. It's the other way around. If we have a public infrastructure that gives access to everybody, that's the way to create competition. And after this company, Stokab, they're called, they were quite active in lobbying the Commission, explaining their business model, how they actually can create the conditions for competition and innovation, etc. And so finally, this model has been approved. We can have sort of city-owned digital networks. And but still, I mean, we're struggling in Sweden now, for instance, because we want to expand the access to high velocity networks. And in the countryside, sometimes it would be easier for the next municipality to extend their network across the border. But there's reluctance. They're saying, oh, municipalities should only act within the city borders and not go into the other municipality. But that's, I mean, that's partly an internal Swedish problem that we have to solve. And it's a barrier to a larger development of this digital infrastructure. So, I mean, we have important roles. We have to be active in regulation, and showing our business case that we actually can deliver an infrastructure that is so important also for private competition.
Yeah, business case is the key word, and something that we had to fight to get through here in Brussels, but also at the national level. But I would say, especially here in Brussels. And next step is to organize more study visits of the Commission in our members' companies so that they can see how innovative and efficient and effective our members are. Donc, il nous reste 10 minutes à peu près.
Right, so we have still 10 minutes to go, 9 minutes to go, and I would like to ask Pascal, who certainly has quite a lot to share with us about research, namely at the European level. And as Nantes is our host, I would also invite you to conclude this roundtable. Well, tough task. I'll try to do my best. I'd just like to say I was quite interested in what Michele mentioned earlier on, because it's true that public service companies are not research institutions, but we are the right place to carry out test trials. For instance, in Nantes, we have a hydrogen driven uh, uh, um, barges on the river, right? And so this is an experience that we have launched in Nantes, and so we have a hydrogen station in Nantes for our boats, our barges, but which will also be used for other development uses, right? So this capacity, this ability to work with research, namely when it comes to trials and tests, is extremely important. Another example, we're very proud in Nantes, Semitan, about our policy, our maintenance policy. In Nantes, buses run for somewhere between 20 and 25 years compared to 15 years in other networks. Why? Because our maintenance experts, together with the manufacturers, have come up with preventive maintenance approaches, which allows us to have this long life span of our vehicles. This is also a very important approach. Now, when it comes to the impact of the EU, I also agree with Michele. Quite often, or too often, we consider Europe to be a wallet. But Europe is not only a wallet. It's a wallet with objective goals, aims, right? Many of our projects in Nantes are partly funded by EU funds, by EU money, either depending on the approach, depending on the projects. But we have been able to manage European funds. Different approaches, namely when it comes for public transport, we managed to use European funds for many of our investments. So yes, there is this notion of the EU being a wallet, but we should not forget that there is a synergy between shared objectives at the European level, so at the macro approach, if I may, and then we also have the local projects which we can develop. And I believe, by the way, that the solutions, the impulse, can start at the EU, but then the result, the outcome, is at the local level, right? And I believe that this cooperation approach makes sense if we look at this big picture. So this is what I could say in this regard. Now, as a conclusion, now I'd like to thank Valeria for moderating this virtual roundtable, and I'd like to thank all our guests, Andreas, Michele, and I forgot the name of our MEP. Anyway, for taking part in these discussions, which I believe were very interesting. Thank you, Andreas, for mentioning France Locale, because Nantes and Nantes Métropole are founders with other French cities to this agency, which allows a direct access, a platform to European funds. So this is kind of just a little thumbs up for Andreas, and a heads up for Michele in terms of where to find the money, huh? And then, we are also very proud to be a capital of innovation, following our other prize or award of 2013 being the Green K City in 2013. So anyway, we would like to invite other cities, European cities, to take part in such competitions. We need to show how set the example. Not that is right. That we are open to the world, open to Europe. Not. Well, especially in this period of COVID crisis, does not allow us to welcome you as we would have liked to from all over Europe, and also go to see them. And I hope that this crisis will allow us to find the solution in the short term, but I guess this will take a lot of innovation in order to meet with this new situation. But in any case, please be assured that Nantes, which is a small metropolis at the European level, we need to remain very humble. You know, if I compare to Milan or Hamburg, well, we're perhaps not the same size, but in any case, we have this firm willingness to cooperate with other European cities in order to build together, finding within our territories these solutions for a long-term cohesion, long-term partnership. And this is only possible thanks to public services and public service companies. So you can count on us. We will always be happy to take part in works and all of the European, the Nantes staff, right, our mayor and all his team. Anyway, thank you very much for taking part in this roundtable. Good day. Right, well, thank you very much. I think this is it. We hopefully will meet again very soon.